my name is Nasreen Munni Kabir, and I first would like to start off by thanking Avid Learning for asking me to talk a little bit about archiving and what it means. Archiving has many aspects, and if we talk about film archiving, the first aspect or the first important thing about archiving is that the films themselves should be preserved, and that means the negative or the film, and now it's in digital form, so therefore all of this should be preserved. Now, who decides out of thousands of films that India produces every year which films will last in time, which will become classics later, and which actually show an amazing kind of a reflection of life in India and therefore should be preserved. Film, as you know, has various aspects. There's feature films, there's documentary footage, there's even home footage and home movies. Now, because we're talking about an amazing quantity of material, it is usually up to the governments of every country to have a national film archive, and they go about preserving, in the old days, the negative, and first of all it was nitride negative, and then it became emulsion negative, and film prints, and so on. As time progressed, people also started collecting and preserving memorabilia, and what I mean by that is that all the various aspects of things that were used to promote this film, which is the poster, the booklet, lobby cards, film stills, and so on. And all of this became a very important kind of activity for private collectors and for governments. When I come to my work, I started research in Hindi cinema in particular in the late 70s. I was very interested in doing a thesis on 4 filmmakers, Mehboob Khan, Bimal Roy, Guru Dutt, and Raj Kapoor. Now, that work led to big programs that I had curated at the Pompidou Center in Paris, and also I started working as the Indian film consultant for Channel 4 television in the UK, and programmed Indian films, which I've been doing now for 35 odd years. However, I suppose my very humble and minute little contribution to archiving has been in the various programs, television programs I made for Channel 4, and these involved filming and interviewing film practitioners, because I always believe that there is the aspect of archiving the films, because you never know which film will be a classic in 30 years or 40 years, and that is, the archiving film material itself was way beyond my means. But I also believe that archiving the film practitioners, the people who made these films, was very important. So you go about an interview and you talk to Naushad Saab or Shami Kapoor or Devanand or Anil Biswas or Shamshad Begum or Lata Ji, and you talk to them about their work and how they approach their work, the whys, the hows, and the whens. And when you have that information directly from the person involved, you have got a really, I feel, an authentic voice, because after they have passed on, or anyone has passed on, everything becomes hearsay, and that to me is less interesting because it's going through another person, it's not going to primary source material. So for me it was very important to interview many people, and I was fortunate that Channel 4 television agreed to commission this series, and it was 49 parts and called Movie Mahal. And that was in 86, 87, 88 and up to 90. And after that I did various other programs which involved interviewing. Why is an interview important? It's because the person tells his or her own story in her words, and even if some details are lost in terms of forgetting in memory, you have a very rich kind of archive of their involvement in cinema. So that to me was very important. From that came the idea that I wanted to continue that work in book form. So I've done many books about Indian film, and particularly those called Conversations With. So I started with Javed Akhtar, then there was Lata Ji, then A.R. Rahman, Gulzar Saab and Wahida Ji and Zakir Hussain, who was not really in my domain because I'm not knowledgeable really about classical music, but I felt that recording an artist and him talking about his work is common to all the arts. So it's not just cinema, it's how an artist approaches their work that mattered. And these books, I think, have done quite well, and they are a record again, a written record of that person's life and their way of thinking. Archiving and has not been taken, in terms of Indian film at least, very seriously in India. So you see that if you wanted to see an interview, filmed interview with Guru Dutt or Mehboob Khan or Sahil Ludhianvi, you will not find it. And it's not like they died in the 19th century or the 18th century. I mean, Sahil Saab died in 81. So normally you should have an interview. There was a lot of television crews and so on. But it took a while, I think, for people to regard Indian film as a real art form. And I think that has now established itself. Today there are many more biographies and books and so on published. And I just think it's all moving in the right direction. But the big question is, it's not, archiving is not just talking about the here and now, like, your film is going to be released next week. What do you think about it? That isn't really archiving. It is much more about the bigger picture, the approach to work, and so on. And I do feel that there is a lot more to be done, and a lot more to be done about this generation. I think, sadly, the past masters, I think, wouldn't I love to see a filmed interview with Guru Dutt or Mehboob Khan? But you can't find it really. You find very, very kind of fragmented interviews and here or there, but there is no probing really in those interviews, and so they are just about facts. I did this film and I was on that set and so on, but why they made their films and so on isn't recorded. So I do hope that Indian film is taken much more seriously in terms of archive. And it's not just the films themselves, but also the people who make these films. And I just hope that I have done some work in this area that will be useful for future generations. Thank you.